Welcome to Finance Magnates Executive Interviews once more. Thank you for joining me today. I'm in Cape Town at the new headquarters offices of Exness in South Africa. I have with me Paul Margarites. He's the Commercial Director of Sub-Saharan Africa in Exness. Thank you so much for joining me, Paul.
Thanks for coming down. Nice to see
Always
you.
a pleasure. Always a pleasure to see you. This time it's in your offices.
Absolutely, yes.
New, shiny, bright offices.
They even smell new, so yeah, it's brand new.
I saw it's actually a few floors that you guys have, huh?
Yeah, it's a couple of different floors. We had to kind of have the right space for all the different units that we have within the division. So yeah, it's a great office, great location, and looking forward to being here for a long time to come.
Exness obtained the license some time back already, a few years ago, but you recently got the offices here in Cape Town. That's why we're here for the opening. What are your plans in Africa?
Our plans in Africa are to invest in the continent. So you're right, we started off here with our first license in 2020 and a small regional office to support that license. But we've since obtained a second license from the local regulator here in South Africa. And our business has grown substantially. So with that comes what we see here today, a bigger office, a bigger team, and ultimately more investment in South Africa and in Cape Town.
How many people do you have in the office, more or less?
We're slowly building the team. Some of them are locally based and we're moving a few across. So we're sitting on about 50 at the moment. And we expect to kind of increase that as time goes on.
So I guess that you see a lot of potential in South Africa in particular.
Absolutely. There's a lot of potential here. I am South African myself, so I kind of, I'm a bit biased, but I think South Africa is absolutely an amazing country and with a lot of potential, with a very rich talent pool of a lot of people who can really add to the organization.
And what's the potential in terms of retail trading? How is the landscape?
The landscape has developed a lot over the last couple of years. South Africa, if you look at the traditional hubs of obviously London, Singapore, even Chicago, South Africa has really developed over the last few years as to one of the sort of hubs on the retail trading side of things. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. We've got very strong regulation here, solid infrastructure, and a very sort of entrepreneurial spirit. So South Africa really has developed and in many ways does lead the way in the space that we're in, which is another reason why we want to be here and we want to be present on the ground.
That's obviously the potential and the growth prospects, I'm guessing. In terms of the trading space, is there any particular challenges that separate this market from any other country in Africa, for example?
Look, each country is different. I mean, Africa is a very vast place and each country has its local sort of nuances. I don't know if the challenges per se, I mean, there's preferences. South Africans historically probably trade more indices than some of the other countries around Africa, just as one example. Again, it's not challenges per se, it's more sort of just nuances or differences. And that's why having the local team and the local presence is important, because we need to understand what those differences are and we need to sort of relay that information to Exness Global to ultimately get the best product for the people and the traders on ground.
I mean, we're talking about the potential and the challenges in the African continent, and South Africa particularly, but it's an emerging market, right? How different is it from other emerging markets like Southeast Asia or Latin America?
I think what makes South Africa and maybe Sub-Saharan Africa in general stand out, a couple of points. It's a relatively new market in some ways. Digital adoption is high and mobile adoption is very high in South Africa. On the back of that, you've got very strong regulation as well, which I think separates South Africa from a lot of the other emerging markets as well. So it's kind of a combination of a young population becoming more mobile active, wanting access to sort of global financial markets in an environment with sound infrastructure and that's well regulated. So it kind of ticks both boxes, in terms of being new enough to kind of grow, but at the same time mature enough to have all the accesses and all the sort of other requirements met. I think Exness has done well because our offering we've got a localized offering of a global product. So we have the local team and we have the basis of this very solid, reliable, transparent and trustworthy global product, which we are able to then replicate in South Africa and other markets around Africa.
And in terms of the audience in South Africa, I think that the adoption or the onboarding within the financial markets is coming very much from a younger generation. We were talking about mobile adoption and technology and how it's a lot on social media, right? And one of the things that I have noticed in the last few years when we have been entering in the African market as well is how the younger generations use Instagram, for example, to search for something. They don't use websites or Google or anything anymore. They go directly into social media for this. I think this kind of adoption maybe separates South Africa from other markets.
I completely agree. We do have a very young population in South Africa and Africa in general. So it makes a lot of sense that, their access to information is more modern and it revolves around social media.
Do you think that Africa is very fragmented on that side? I mean, you also have a license in Kenya, right?
Correct. Yes.
In terms of how do you view the audience, the landscape in Africa, how different is it between all the countries? You did mention that every country has its own kind of personality. How different is it?
So there's differences and there's similarities. Obviously, Africa's a vast place with multiple countries. There's different languages. There's different points of relevance around different sort of areas or sub-regions. But at the same time, it's also still Africa. So something that's particularly relevant in one place, or even a person that's, particularly relevant in one place, might transcend all those differences within the countries. So in terms of a strategy and how to operate in Africa, I think you've got to look at each country individually, but within the context of looking as the continent as a whole.
Mhm.
I know it sounds like a bit of a double-sworded kind of answer.
No, I get it, because
Yeah.
I come from Europe, so I'm guessing that it's a little bit the same, right? A French person is not the same as a Spanish or an Italian, but they all remain European. So
Exactly.
it's kind of like some cultural similarities, but still distinctive personalities, right?
Well put. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was saying. Yeah.
And since you have also the license in Kenya and in South Africa, what are the plans more broadly towards Sub-Saharan Africa?
Look, I think we want to grow in Sub-Saharan Africa. That's a starting point, but we want to do that responsibly. The reason that we licensed in Kenya and South Africa is because those are the two sort of front runners and the two most advanced countries from a licensing perspective. We see that developing over the years, and we want to be a part of that growth and development, even in the regulatory space. I think it's important for our industry that we are part of that regulation, and we will grow responsibly as the sort of individual countries grow within that space. So it's a long-term investment. Yes, you mentioned Kenya and South Africa, and there will be more to follow.
Interesting. Will be maybe in the next office opening, go figure where.
We don't know where it's going to be, but there probably will be one at some point. Yes.
Good. I mean, you're talking about the growth and having long-term plans and this direction, but we have seen as Finance Magnates a lot of the players, a lot of brokers, big names, also entering the South African space. I'm guessing it's getting a bit more competitive. How does Exness manage to stand out in these, it's still an emerging market and still not too crowded, but how are you managing to stand out from every other player that is entering the space?
Look, I think locally what we do is we build on what made us good globally, which is transparency, which is a very reliable product. You look at the product and the platform that we have, it's really top notch. And that's the thing ultimately that traders are looking for. So once you remove the bells and whistles, you've got to have stability, you've got to have good execution, solid spreads, and we have that. And we're able to take those global sort of models and pricing models and offer them to the local people. So on the basis of that, I think we will always stand out as having a superior product. And then you add to that the local team on the ground, where you've got, the individual sort of localized support. I think it's a winning combination for Exness.
Wish you all the best with the new offices, Paul. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching, and see you in the next one.